You're watching WICE Q95 TV. Stay tuned for Caribbean music, news, entertainment, drama, creative Caribbean video, and happening cultural events. Only on WICE Q95 TV.
I just love Q95.
I know you're sitting tight. This is Talk on the Block Thursday. I hope you're ready. Sit tight. The opposition leader is already in the house. We're expecting the Brain and Brian. The Brain is already seated. But for the first half an hour, as promised, we will give you the opposition leader. You heard the Prime Minister last night. This morning you heard maybe 50% of the interview conducted. But for just this moment, I'm interested in this before we get to the opposition leader. Let's listen.
But the point is, I mean, really and truly, they wasn't producing anything in our country. You gotta come there. It's a bit later register that I asked him to be deputy prime minister. Prime minister, and I mean, you gotta register that.
Don't kill me slowly.
I'm telling you.
Prime minister.
The guy is not how the constitution functions and the provisions of the institution. He registered for the BA. He can continue to lead up the opposition and be the
deputy
prime minister of Dominica. So he will have an office next door to me, and he will come to work Monday, Friday, you know, and
so you are going to China while you went to Vietnam and going further.
You're not going with me, or when I'm not there, you're in charge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Skerrit was taking too long to give me the state.
That was the Prime Minister last night. Now let's go back, rewind that tape to September 7th. When the Prime Minister was congratulating all the parliamentarians. I want you to listen, not only on the opposition side, he was congratulating the group. And I want you to pay particular attention to what he said there at the end. Let's listen.
I want to say here that I was very impressed and satisfied with the overall sense of purpose and commitment of all parliamentarians, particularly the leader of the opposition, Honorable Lennox Linton.
I want to go back to start there from the top, okay? Let's listen again. September 7th.
I want to say here that I was very impressed and satisfied with the overall sense of purpose and commitment of all parliamentarians, particularly the leader of the opposition.
Let's repeat that one more time. Let's repeat that one more time.
I want to say here that I was very impressed and satisfied with the overall sense of purpose and commitment of all parliamentarians, particularly the leader of the opposition.
Just for the sake of emphasizing one more time.
I want to say here that I was very impressed and satisfied with the overall sense of purpose and commitment of all parliamentarians, particularly the leader of the opposition, Honorable Lennox Linton, who has been most constructive in his interventions. I believe this formula of parliamentarians working together in the face of adversity has served us well thus far during this repair and restoration period.
Okay, I'm going to repeat it just the final time so the Brain, who was laughing last night, as part of that group there so you can hear it one more time. Brain, this one is for you.
I want to say here that I was very impressed and satisfied with the overall sense of purpose and commitment of all parliamentarians, particularly the leader of the opposition, Honorable Lennox Linton, who has been most constructive in his interventions. I believe this formula of parliamentarians working together in the face of adversity has served us well thus far during this repair and restoration period.
Now September 7th, 2015. The brain, that's what the Prime Minister said. Now in sharp contrast to what he said to you and that group last night on Carrier FM. Let's listen again.
The point is, I mean, really and truly, they told the provision in that country. Gary comes in. It's a bit, Linton really thought that I asked him to be Deputy Prime Minister. Or Prime Minister, and I mean, the guy really thought that, you know.
Don't kill me slowly.
I'm telling you.
Prime Minister.
The guy is so nice about the constitution function and the provision of the institution. He really thought he could have been, he could have continued to lead of the opposition and be the
Deputy
Prime Minister of Dominica. So he will have an office next door to me. And he'll come to work on Friday. You know, and
so you were going to China while you went to Vietnam and going further.
You're not going with me or when I'm not there, he's in charge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The channel is great. You know, Skerrit was taking too long to give me this thing.
Okay, we're going to listen to the Prime Minister again, and this time to sort of justify his trip to the Asian countries. A piece on that before we move on to the opposition leader.
Post-Erica. And we are determined to build back Dominica much better than it was prior to the Gulf of America. And you're going to have to mobilize resources. You're going to have to mobilize foreign direct investment in the country. Vietnam is one of the fastest developed economies in the world. The US has a similar program like our economic institute program, where you can invest, I think it's $500,000 US into a project in the United States, and you will be granted residency status in the United States. And Vietnam was the second source market for that EB5 program of the United States. Malta has the program. Portugal has a program, and has the economic conservation program. Bulgaria has one. So, you know, these guys do not understand the position. What it really takes to run a country like Germany. And the fact is, you have to be very thinking. You have to be diligent. You have to have a vision, and you must be able to go there and sell the country, promote your country. And from your country to new frontiers. You can't do only the traditional part. You have to do new frontiers.
All right, we have listened to the Prime Minister. We heard him this morning more at length, and now we're repeating, certain aspects, certain important aspects of the interview that we had this morning. Of course, he spoke to his trip to Asia, trying to justify that. He says the opposition does not understand what it takes to run a country like Dominica in terms of promotion and investment. And you heard him ridiculing Mr. Lennox Linton, making a joke, if you will, alongside others on that panel to the office of the opposition leader. The opposition leader, Mr. Lennox Linton, is in the House at this time, and we're going to be speaking directly. Mr. Lennox Linton, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Matthias Pelletier Jr. And good afternoon to the people of Concord and Marigot and the people of Dominica. It's a pleasure, as always, to be here, Matt Pelletier.
Mr. Linton, you've heard the Prime Minister, of course, ridiculing the office of the opposition leader, basically saying you guys have no idea what you're about, what you're doing. Let's respond to that.
And he also said he was playing politics. Before I respond, can you repeat that statement of the Prime Minister from the 7th of September 2015 for me, please?
Let's do that.
To say here that I was very impressed and satisfied with the overall sense of purpose and commitment of all parliamentarians, particularly the leader of the opposition, Honorable Lennox Linton, who has been most constructive in his interventions. I believe this formula of parliamentarians working together in the face of adversity has served us well thus far during this repair and restoration period.
You just did your request. Then.
Honesty and integrity is important to the successful leadership of Dominica, indeed any nation state in the civilized world. The statement from the Prime Minister is the 7th of September. The Prime Minister is making reference not to one or two parliamentarians or a group of parliamentarians on this side or the next side. He is making reference to all parliamentarians. And in being satisfied with what he saw from all parliamentarians, repeat all, meaning both sides of the island, across both sides of the island parliament, he wanted in particular to single out the leader of the opposition, Lennox Linton, for his constructiveness in intervention, for the constructiveness of his interventions. In other words, the Prime Minister was saying that in the contact he had had so far and in the meetings he had held and chaired of the Parliamentary Advisory Group on National Reconstruction, he was impressed in particular, not with somebody on his team or some people on his team, he was particularly impressed with Lennox Linton, the leader of the opposition. And Matt, I want to leave that there because it's only the Prime Minister can account for what he says. Whether what he says then was true or what he's saying now is true, that is for him to decide. But he cannot leave the people of Dominica with both impressions. And I thank the record for this statement of the 7th of September, because at that point we had two meetings of the group. We had the third meeting the following day on the 8th of September. And if I am to offer an opinion, I believe that was the meeting in which I was the most constructive. That particular meeting on the 8th. And then we had a final meeting on the 21st of September. The group has not met since. So again, honesty, integrity, decency is important to the leadership, the successful leadership of a nation state in the civilized world in 2015. Mr. Skerrit, again, I know when I say these things they get upset and they send papers demanding responses or else there'll be legal action and so on. But I want to say that Mr. Skerrit now has the responsibility of coming clean with the people of Dominica and explaining to them what is it he said on the 7th versus what is it he's saying now. But also the people of Dominica have a right, to be upset with the Prime Minister playing these silly games with them and their important business over and over and over again. This is a gentleman who left shortly after the National Day celebrations, didn't indicate he was going anywhere. The people woke up on the morning of the 4th to hear that he was, not on the 4th, on the morning of the 5th to hear that he was on the other side of the world. He was in England heading to Asia for engagements in Hanoi, in Bangkok, and in Hong Kong. And we heard that it had to do with economic citizenship. So you would believe, from what you were hearing and what you were reading, Mr. Skerrit had gone out there, having now satisfied himself that there needs to be a national reconstruction funding dimension now to the Citizenship by Investment program. If that is what he's telling us, or that is what he was trying to say on his trip to the Far East, you expect that when he comes back now, he will speak with clarity to what is it he was proposing over there, what is it he was selling, what is it he was pushing, and what specifically were the results. Do you get the impression, Mantelte, that the Prime Minister is bringing clarity to what he's suggesting is on the table, which is a national reconstruction funding dimension to the Citizenship by Investment program? Do you understand him to be suggesting that we'll be picking up some money for national reconstruction from the Citizenship by Investment program?
I haven't gotten that yet.
Okay, well, I'm hearing that somewhere in there, but of course the Prime Minister's focus is on money, passport money for the construction of hotels. It's there in the air that, well, maybe we will get some money for our reconstruction efforts as well, but we have the Kempinski to do, now we're getting the Hilton, now we're getting this, and now we're getting that, and that seems to be his focus. He's using the passport money to build hotels, but he's suggesting somewhere in there that we can get some passport money as well for reconstruction. Well, you know, the people of Dominica must ask now, what is the plan? What is the plan, Mr. Prime Minister? And how much are you intending to raise for national reconstruction post-Erica from citizenship by investment? How much are you planning to get in debt forgiveness when you will approach agencies like the Paris Club and so on? What amount of fiscal space you think needs to be cleared so that you could get a certain amount of soft loan funding? What is your soft loan funding target for reconstruction? What is your grant funding target for reconstruction? We are almost 3 months out now from Tropical Storm Erica. And you're not getting the semblance that the Prime Minister has as much as anything like a plan, or is working on a plan, a national plan for moving Dominica forward. He seems to be reliant on what he's hearing from the multilateral aid institutions that have come in, have done the assessments, and have made some suggestions. They will make recommendations. The IMF has its own idea as to where we should go. If you do not agree with what the IMF is telling you, what is your plan? What is the homegrown plan from the cabinet, driven by the cabinet under the leadership of Roosevelt Skerrit, to take Dominica out of where it is right now? We need to be hearing those things, especially from a Prime Minister who has come from the other side of the world, which has been for the last week, saying that he's been attending to the nation's business. While he was not there, there was an emergency meeting, an urgent meeting of the Parliament for the passage of the Eastern Caribbean Asset Management Corporation Agreement, for bringing that into under the force of law. You would have thought that the Prime Minister would have addressed that on his return, and would have said how happy he was that it is now passed, and what is it that the ordinary people of Dominica who may be experiencing difficulties with their mortgage payment post-Erica, who may be having difficulties with their assets that are being held by the bank as collateral for some loan facility or the other, what is in all of this now, this new legislation that has been passed for the poor ordinary people who may be that way affected? You hear nothing from the Prime Minister but hate, but prejudice, but denigration. You hear nothing but ridiculing the opposition leader and the members of the parliamentary opposition, almost as though that is going to bring some benefit, is going to bring relief, it's going to bring reconstruction funding dollars to Dominica. It is not. And so Mr. Skerrit needs to get real, and he needs to focus on what is important to Dominica. What is important to us right now is the emergence of a plan which brings all hands on deck and which tells us clearly, not only are all hands on deck, but we are assembling the support, the consideration of the global community in moving us to where we want to go. Now, we have expressed some concerns, and we have said to the Prime Minister clearly. I wrote to him on the 30th of October indicating that there were some issues. There's some issues arising out of the arrest of NG Lapsang in the United States, and the fact that NG Lapsang is in detention in the US, along with John Ash, the former Antiguan ambassador at the UN, and the former deputy ambassador at the UN for Dominican Republic, Francis Lorenzo. The fact that all three gentlemen are in US custody now, awaiting trial for racketeering, for bribery, for corruption. The US is also concerned that the august body called the United Nations has been used as a platform for murky, questionable dealings by persons enjoying diplomatic immunity on the UN cover of the United States soil. They're concerned about that, and an investigation is ongoing. Mr. Skerrit was with Lapsang. Mr. Skerrit was with John Ash. Mrs. Skerrit was with Francis Lorenzo. Their hands were together, holding one knife, cutting a cake in Macau on the 26th, the very same day that Mrs. Skerrit signed with Lapsang and with Teresa Liu of the South-South Corporation office in Macau, and Lapsang of the Sun Kian IP Group Foundation, an agreement for the establishment of a technology transfer center for Latin America and the Caribbean to be based in Dominica. I have suggesting again, that agreement within the fold of the UN is not dissimilar to the agreement for which John Ash and Francis Lorenzo got in trouble. Because Francis Lorenzo was using Lapsang's money taking Lapsang's money to give to John Ash so that John Ash could exercise his influence for the establishment of a trade facility, a trade expo center in Macau that would be funded by Lapsang. And for that, Lapsang was willing to spend his money, which Ash received. We want to know the agreement and the arrangements under which that agreement of the 26th of August, one day before Tropical Storm Erica, was signed by Roosevelt Skerrit in Macau. They have refused to release the documents. They refuse to talk about it. It is none of your business. And they use colorful adjectives when they talk about none of your business. I don't go down that road. But the people of Dominica have a right to know. What is it Mr. Skerrit signed with Lapsang on the 26th? And what were the arrangements surrounding that signing? That is a matter that needs to be investigated. Because the lawyers of Mrs. Skerrit can jump high, they can jump low. Mrs. Skerrit's name is going to be called alongside the name of Lapsang going forward, because that is what the reality is. And nobody around the world has caused that but Roosevelt Skerrit himself, who entered into that relationship with Lapsang many years ago, more than 10 years ago. He has been in that relationship with Lapsang. Because we're hearing now from the US probe of these matters that it was Lapsang who was the mastermind behind Dominica's switch of diplomatic relations from Taipei to Beijing in 2004. That matter has surfaced in the courts of the United States. It is in the Wall Street Journal. You can read it there. I'm not talking about the Sun newspaper of Dominica or the Chronicle. I'm talking about the Wall Street Journal of the United States. You can go and you can read it there. And you can also read there and other publications around the world, Associated Press and so on. This question of Mr. Lapsang now owning a Dominica diplomatic passport, referred to in some of the reports as an honorary passport, which he said he received for his willingness to invest $20 million in a hotel project in Dominica. As far as we know, NG Lapsang has invested no money in any hotel in Dominica. We remember he was here in 2002 with Greystone on a deal that would allow him to take over from Greystone after Greystone has spent all the passport money. It didn't fly. But Lapsang shows up again when Dominica switches diplomatic relations from Taipei to Beijing. And after Mr. Skerrit signed in Beijing, his next stop was Macau. When he left Macau, he came to Dominica. And shortly after arriving in Dominica in April, he headed to the Cayman Islands to visit banks over there. One of the ladies who were facilitating him in visiting banks, a lady by the name of Susan Oldie, later on in 2004, ended up transferring $400,000 to the Citizens for a Better Dominica group in Dominica, through all sorts of Bank of Butterfield, Bank of New York, Bank of America, and so on and so on. Classic movement we're talking about. So all of that is on the public record in terms of an association between Mr. Skerrit and his friends in Macau, namely, one of them we know, MG Lapsang. David Sue, Mr. Skerrit's ambassador, wrote to him and told him, listen, I don't like the role you're playing in this matter where we're trying to liquidate the Shangri-La and get Felix Chen out of our hair. I don't like it because I've been good to you guys, to you and to your guys. I have given you watches, I have given you clothing, I have given you jewelry, I have given you computers, you've gotten cash money from me, and I have paid for your sexual entertainment in Macau. My Peltier, Mrs. Skerrit actually replied to that letter in 2009. Mrs. Skerrit replied to that letter, and nowhere in his reply to the letter does he deny any of the things that Ambassador David Sue alleged that he did for Mr. Skerrit. Mr. Skerrit simply said, I didn't do it for corrupt purposes, I accepted them as a gift from you. You're my friend and brother. Okay? So, check them off. Sexual entertainment in Macau, checked. Cash to you and your ministers, checked. Clothing, watches, computers, jewelry, all checked. We received that, yes. But I didn't receive it under any corrupt arrangement. I received it because you are my friend and brother. Mrs. Skerrit now wants to scare the people of Dominica away from saying that he has an association, an affiliation, or a friendship with NG Lapsang. Which association and friendship, renewed and revived as recently as the 26th of August, could create problems for us in terms of the image of a Prime Minister involved in friendships or connections or affiliations with somebody who is now in US custody for international racketeering and the like. So, here's where we are. Mrs. Skerrit comes back, and rather than deal with the burning issues that are threatening our way forward, he chooses to denigrate and ridicule Lennox Linton. The mistake he's making is that the issues are not going to go away. They're not going anywhere. Because he was the one who stood up under oath in the BVI court, after which he was pronounced by Astafan and Company as a witness of truth. And he said that he was looking for $20 million, US dollars, from Mr. Wu, NG Lapsang, in order to get investor Felix Chen to pay back Mr. Felix Chen for the money that some Dominicans felt had been swindled from him, and then get him out of the picture so that himself and Mr. Sue could proceed with the development of the Layo River area. My Peltier, let me ask you a question. You listen to the Prime Minister talking about his trip, all right? What have you gotten from the Prime Minister talking about his trip? What sense do you get? Do you get the sense that this was a successful trip where the business of Dominica was focused on methodically, meticulously? I mean, if that were the case, would Mrs. Skerrit have so much more to tell us in that 45 minutes on Kyrie FM than all the things he found it necessary to say and to laugh about with the brain and others for 45 minutes? 45 minutes? What's your sense?
I was expecting a lot more of Lennox Linton, and even with he indicating that now he's here, we have a donors meeting coming up. I mean, following a major trip like that, you would have thought a lot more would have been achieved. Well, from that.
Well, here's some things. On the trip, Mr. Skerrit had an interview. In the interview in Hanoi, I think it was, Mr. Skerrit was asked, what if somebody from Myanmar, who is on the sanctions list now for international crime, could somebody like end up with a Dominican passport? Mr. Skerrit's response, I know it passed a lot of people by. Mr. Skerrit's response was, if you're on a sanctions list, it would be difficult to get a Dominican passport. Difficult, not impossible, difficult. Now this is Mr. Skerrit who tells us that they are huge on due diligence. Due diligence is supposed to find out what the ordinary man does not know. But sanctions lists are public. So it doesn't take any due diligence expert. It doesn't take anything from a due diligence expert or firm to find out that somebody's on the sanctions list.
Let me just ask a question.
That is X number one. You cannot be on a sanctions list for international crime and end up with a Dominican passport. Mr. Skerrit was incapable of saying that is impossible. Because he knows why. He knows why.
Hold on, Lennox. I want to ask a question. I want to ask Brain the question. Brain is here sitting silently. Mr. Brain, you heard the Prime Minister saying in his accusations of the opposition leader, Lennox Linton, that he could not read for more than 5 minutes without reading a script. Is Mr. Lennox looking at a script right now?
Why you want to ask me that question?
I only want to know.
Why are you asking me that question,
So,
man?
Brain, you were there last night.
Why are you asking me the question that Mr. Lennox Linton is reading a script?
I'm asking
and you know fully well, and you can tell the nation, why you want to try to embarrass me
No,
by
I'm
asking me?
because he made the statement.
Why you want to ask me? Did you hear me ask did you hear me respond to Mr. Skerrit in terms?
I'm asking the question. If you
Matt,
want to say, I can say it for
well,
you.
say it for yourself, Matt.
Say it for yourself.
Say that you hear Mr. Lennox Linton not reading from a script. Say it for yourself. Don't ask me that question.
You've said it. I just want to...
I find that you're asking me trivialities.
Oh, okay.
Trivialities
so
you're
all of a
asking.
sudden I'm asking trivialities.
Yes, you're asking me trivialities.
And you're asking serious questions last night.
When you're ready to get into the meat of Lennox Linton's, what I would call response to what Mr. Skerrit has been talking about, then I'm prepared very naturally and willingly.
Not joking.
I will laugh when I have to laugh. I'm not going to be in a straitjacket.
All right.
It's my birthday.
It's
my birthday today, and I intend to enjoy it to the fullest.
I'm gonna play a song for you, Brian. It's
It's my birthday today.
You didn't tell me.
No, I'm telling you now.
How you found it out?
He just told me.
No, but I've been saying that all the time. You've not been paying attention. You're immersed in the politics of the day.
They recognized on the show last night that today was going to be Brain's birthday.
I told them, and they recognized it.
They recognize it. Okay.
They sang for you.
Yeah, we'll sing for you at the end of the show.
Thank you very much.
Let me take a break.
But yeah, thank you.
The Brain and Brian is here. We have 15 more minutes, and all the telephone lines are going. Brain, you want to ask a question? Here's your chance.
Certainly, I will make my comments. I believe that one of the issues was the issue of the letter. I have not seen the copy of that letter that Mr. Linton, the leader of the opposition, wrote to Mr. Skerrit, and there were strong words. I'm not defending neither of them.
All right.
One of the things that I got the impression was step aside. Step aside, meaning in local language, that it appeared that Mr. Skerrit was no longer fit to lead Dominica post-Erica in lieu of the allegations that have been bandied across.
All right.
On the streets, I'm hearing that Mr. Skerrit has not been implicated in the affidavit. I'm not a lawyer. In terms of Mr. Skerrit being involved in the activity that Mr. Ash and others who have been mentioned were involved with. I have not heard that Dominica has been placed on the blacklist, and I know that the United States take anybody who is trying to defraud the state very, very seriously. And they would have made an alert that Dominica is on a blacklist. So I did not hear that. So all I'm hearing is allegations upon allegations. I have not heard that the United States is interested in asking Mr. Skerrit any questions as it relates to the situation involving the man in China.
So your point is what?
My point is that if there was any allegations that were so serious and Mr. Skerrit was involved in any wrongdoing in terms of money laundering, the United States would have asked, as they have done with Noriega. They could even arrest Mr. Skerrit. I have not heard that. And that is a critical aspect of that. All I'm hearing is allegations.
So let
me ask you a question now, because you asked me. Have you heard whether Mr. Skerrit has been implicated in that fucker we've been hearing about?
You were at the news conference when I asked the Prime Minister, the brain, tell me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. You've heard the accusation, you've heard that before, right?
And did you hear his response? I was there with you.
Okay, right. You've heard of Mr. Ambrose George and Julian Giro, guilty
Yes.
by association.
Was
So Mr. Ambrose George, hold on. Mr. Ambrose George, according to Tony Asafan, was guilty at that time. Yes?
Yes.
So why do you think that Mr. Tony Asafan is staying away from making those?
Hang on. But I am making the statement now. Mr. Ambrose George was never arrested by the United States. Mr. Ambrose George has made several visits to the United States. He is no longer in government.
Yeah.
Does he still have a diplomatic passport? I don't know.
No, you're straying away from the issue, right? You're really straying away from
Well,
the
put
issue.
me back on track.
At the time, Mr. Ambrose George, according to Tony Asafan, was guilty by association.
That's what he said. It's on the record.
Okay. So, this time, nobody's guilty by association.
So you're saying that
No, but it is not even a matter of guilty by association. It's a matter of what is on the public record in terms of the reasons for which John Ash and Francis Lorenzo, along with Lapseng, who provided the bribe money for John Ash, are now in U.S. custody awaiting trial. I am saying, and Brain and a number of other people in Dominica have this luxury of saying, well, okay, the Prime Minister is not named in the affidavit. We're not saying that he was. We're not saying that his name has surfaced anywhere in court papers to do with the NG Lapseng matter, except that Lapseng's lawyer has disclosed in the court that he is the holder of a Dominica diplomatic passport. So here you have another international racketeer, another alleged international racketeer now, facing trial in the United States, who is holding a Dominican diplomatic passport. You had the case of Francesco Corralo, on Interpol's most wanted list of criminals around the world, holding his Dominican passport, diplomatic passport. You had the case of Timothy Cornwall, writing to officials in Qatar, February 2009, on the letterhead of the Ministry of Reginald Austri, quoting Roosevelt Skerrit as approving this move to set up diplomatic relations with Qatar. And then later on in the year, being jailed in the United Kingdom for massive bank fraud. At the time that he was engaged with Dominica, Dominica ought to have known through any basic due diligence exercise that he was awaiting trial for accusations of massive bank fraud. So you have this pattern over many years of the government of Dominica, of the Prime Minister, being linked, being associated with people involved in international crime. And I'm saying this latest episode now, where once again, a man who you stood up on the stand and suggested is your friend on the oath, a man who led you into diplomatic relations with China, breaking away from Taiwan, a man perhaps at whose hotel you have stayed in Macau, etc., a man who you wanted to take $20 million from to pay back an investor who Dominicans feared had been swindled of his investment. You no longer want us to believe that you have any association at all with that man because he's now in US custody, even though on the 26th of August you signed an agreement with him for a UN South-South Corporation Technology Transfer Center in Latin America and the Caribbean, in Dominica for Latin America and the Caribbean. And again, Matt Pelletier, I want to underline this. This agreement that was signed on the 26th of August, in my view, is not dissimilar to the agreement for which John Ash got in trouble accepting bribes from Lapseng. Nobody has said that on that matter Mr. Skerrit has accepted bribes. All people have said is that he needs to come clean and tell us what the deal is. Because if Lapseng's modus operandi is to pay people for the influence that he wants within the UN, within the government, or wherever, that is his MO. It doesn't change because
let me emphasize
What is the point?
Let me emphasize the point I was trying to make to Brain earlier. For association to Brain, do you realize that Ambrose George was fired? Nobody asked him to step aside. He was fired, yes?
Yes, the fact.
Association.
Yes, wait, Matt, don't run like that. Why are you just running? You want to just run. Why you just like, you like song bites? Allow me to articulate, my brother.
Go ahead.
Give me my time. I am saying the party, the Labour Party took a decision to put Mr. Ambrose George aside. The party later on took a decision to bring him back in cabinet. Subsequently, he lost the election. We cannot go on a tangent and I cannot find you guilty in any court of law. Guilty by association. It has never happened in law. Do you want to bring up state whereby a man is found guilty by association, Matt?
You're jumping all over the
I'm jumping on guilty by association. Make your point. Let him go. Let him, Brian.
Matt, I'm very happy that the leader of the opposition is here with us, you know, and I really was happy to yield all my time to him, and I hope Brain would have done the same, Matt, because what we see here, even when we listen to Brain talk about you cannot prove it in court and law and so on, the fact is that N.G. Lapsang and Roosevelt Skerrit are good friends, body, doing business together. That's a fact. We hear about the bulletproof Mercedes-Benz, Matt. You understand? These are questions which still have to be answered because the questions were put to Mr. Skerrit in Parliament as to the ownership or who gave Dominica that gift, and up till now that question is unanswered. And we know, we suspect that it came from N.G. Lapsang. You know, and as the leader of the opposition indicated earlier, that relationship between Skerrit and N.G. Lapsang is not yesterday, you know. That's before Ash knew N.G. Lapsang. You know, that's since 2004. These guys are old friends, bodies, man. You know, and Brain needs to understand that, and that's why we cannot, court of law, no court of law. This thing stands true. Show me your friends and I will show you who you are. You know, the leader of the opposition spoke of the MO of the Prime Minister. He has a habit, a modus operandi. It is part of his being, his existence, to deal with criminals and to tell lies. Look at a big lie today. He caught himself in your presence and you couldn't even give the man a little jab under his ribs to say, PM, no, you made a statement on the 7th of September, which is fun. You're allowing the man to go there, don't go there. Hang on. You come in on our radio station now to raise
I'm playing serious.
I'm playing serious.
No, I'm still laughing.
To raise the pressure of our listeners.
I am still laughing and enjoying my life.
Promised not to listen to our program because you're going to see.
No, man, they will listen. They will listen, man. They will listen. They will listen. Trust me when the brain is dead. They will listen.
Let's take a phone call. Hello. Yeah.
To pray. Good afternoon, leader of the opposition.
You have to direct you, sir.
Directly to pray.
No, before.
The man is asking you a question.
Hang on, man. The man have to show some courtesy.
The Labour Party find it was necessary to set Ambrose George aside, tell him step aside until investigation. When they found nothing in him, they brought him back. Now, why finding it so wrong for the leader of the opposition in what Mr. Skerrit is tied up in to ask him to step aside until investigation? What is wrong about it?
No.
Answer me, Brain, and answer honestly.
Brain, and the gentleman wants an answer.
Right, I will answer him that way, very calmly.
Yeah.
Only the political party in office can ask for a man that belongs to the party if they find he's guilty of wrongdoing or is alleged to be involved in wrongdoing. The party can ask him to step down. But Mr. Linton saying step aside, people get the impression,
because of association.
People get the impression that Mr. Linton wants to take over the reins of power in Dominica. That's what they get.
That is arrant nonsense, and you know that. The specific request to the Prime Minister is as follows. We need a special meeting of the Parliamentary Advisory Group on National Reconstruction on or before the 6th of November 2015 to deal with the following matters of growing public concern. Number one, an agreement for you to step aside as Prime Minister within 30 days pending the completion of US FBI investigations into the corruption of the United Nations by the so-called crime syndicate of N.G. Lapsang, and the resolution of whatever unlawful agreements or exchanges you may have concluded with the head of the Macau-based Sun Kian IP Group and or any of its subsidiaries. Number 2, immediate disclosure of the agreement you signed in Macau on August 26, 2015 with Teresa Liu of the UN South-South Cooperation Office and NG Lapseng of the Suncan IP Group Foundation. And number 3, immediate disclosure of the agreement under which Italian aristocrat Paolo Zampoli joined the diplomatic staff at Dominica's permanent mission to the United Nations and now appears to be using the august body as cover for murky private dealings. Those are specific requests, and those are requests in the national interest of the Commonwealth of Dominica, not in Roosevelt Skerrit's private interest. I keep making the point to the people of Dominica, I don't work for Roosevelt Skerrit, you know. All this nonsense talk about who wants to be prime minister and all that foolishness. I'm not getting involved in that because the role I have been set with, I have been given at the moment, is the role of parliamentary opposition leader. I am advocating for better parliamentary oversight of the affairs of government, as parliamentarians do all around the world. We want to bring a greater amount of transparency to government affairs, a greater amount of accountability to the people, and a greater amount of honesty and integrity in the leadership of the country. And those Dominican people who believe that we're going to get success with Roosevelt Skerrit using the leadership of Dominica to engage in all of these questionable acts and associations and engage in all sorts of lies and dishonesty, like he's telling again, coming back from this trip overseas. If you believe you can fool the world, then go right ahead and fool the world. If you believe that you can attract money from a world community, hard-working taxpayers are giving their governments the okay to help you. And you are involved in all sorts of wasteful spending in Dominica with tax dollars here. And other people will allow you to spend their tax dollars in that wasteful way. So they'll give you a $1.3 billion bailout just like that, with no procurement act on the books, with no functioning procurement act, with no arrangements for transparent, accountable, efficient spending of money. Then we're wasting our time.
Here's my final question to you, Lennox Linton. We don't have too much time. You heard the Prime Minister basically saying you are a waste of time on this parliamentary group. What is your decision, Lennox Linton, moving forward as it relates to this parliamentary group put together after?
I said in the clearest possible terms a week ago that Lennox Linton will not take any further part in the work of this so-called Parliamentary Advisory Group on National Reconstruction. I've said that in the clearest possible terms. And we will have a press conference next week, the parliamentary opposition, where we will go over our position and indicate, again, in clear terms, what's going forward. Because from day one, we advocated for the group to be an official standing committee of the Parliament. Here we were in an arrangement with the government, which was good. Right after a storm, we didn't want to stand on ceremony and hurt the national interest while we're waiting for ceremony to take place. We got involved with the government side, and we were talking. We were trying to see how we could steer the ship of state in the right direction with the right kind of advice. And then all sorts of things happened. We've had 4 meetings of that group, and in between you know, the months and the meetings, you know, lots of unsavory things being said by Mr. Skerrit's advisor and chief legal advisor and advocate and so on. And we felt, given the fact that listen to what we say, you know, we said that to Mr. Prime Minister in the letter, and read it.
We don't have too much time.
And let me read it quickly. We have remained faithful in service to the common good as members of the Parliamentary Advisory Group on National Reconstruction, notwithstanding vicious public attacks on our sincerity purpose by your chief spokesman and legal advisor, and your blatant refusal to distance yourself from his inaccurate and highly obnoxious comments. We have noted the routine rejection of our advice on critical elements of recovery and reconstruction, which has raised compelling public queries about the credibility and usefulness of the initiative to work together. Nonetheless, this request to free up the national leadership responsibility from the compromising influence of your connection to accused international criminals is the most serious and far-reaching advice we have offered in the national interest to date. Listen carefully. we expect that it will be accepted in the spirit of love for country in which it is offered, and thereby underscore the necessity of this joint initiative for the good we are committed to do for our beloved Dominica. Obviously, that's not what they're interested in, and it's time to move on. We've said that since last week. God bless you, Matt Peltier.
The brain.
The brain is having, well, you're going to have to play the bill this time.
No. Lennox.
I get someone to sing him a bit.
No, Lennox.
You want a cake, brain?
Get me a cake, man.
Wow.
Get me a cake. I am demanding it.
Okay.
But anyway, Mr. Linton, allow me, Brian. I know you're eager to run and make the comment, but let me make my comments. My responsibility as a Dominican, I do not support any political sides. When I went to the Kyrie FM, I came under tremendous pressure.
That's an apology.
Because persons were saying I'm blue. Now I'm here, you are saying I'm red.
I found you.
No, who's saying
Very
you're red?
soft. Like.
That's a matter for you.
Who's saying you're red, bro?
I will remain.
Asking questions. I'm laughing, brain.
I have the right to laugh. I was like, look, Lennox laughing now. What happened? I must take life serious and die under stress? No, man.
My final comment, Matt, is just to prepare brain for next week or sometime in the future. Because I know bit of our callers don't like him too much again. Man, he needs to tell us about the 574 houses that Skerrit said that he built after the since Erica. You remember that?
I think I asked him earlier this week. He answered. He said that was
thank you, man.
He said that
Thank you. You were not listening.
So did you tell Skerrit that last night? Or
I didn't have
to tell him he was lying again.
No. But I didn't address that situation.
But Brady, here's someone asking you for a resolution. Let me read that for you.
What is the resolution,
Matt, the brain is my boy. We talk all the time. But he must make a resolution on his birthday to stop being a national joke.
Oh, well, let me just respond to that.
Yes.
In Shakespearean play, and you know that, Lennox,
yes,
the jester was a very significant part of the play.
The jester.
The jester.
Yes.
Is that the role you're accepting now? You're accepting the role?
I can accept that role as well. But I have a very important role.
Brent, do you know Miss Olive Harris?
Of course, she was my literature teacher.
Does she have any relationship with you and your name?
No.
Oh,
No.
I must confess.
You're a judge.
And I must confess, I did pass English and English literature.
But I want to say how you get to keep going on. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow is birthday.
Happy birthday, kid.